Welcome everybody. I'm Christine Weiser. I'm the publisher of Tech and Learning and Tech and Learning University, and we have had an amazing day today. We blew up the chat on, we actually exceeded 5,000 live chats. I haven't checked the numbers, but we had over 1,300 registrants, and so this is just, it's been great. I've been in the lounge all day, and so it's been very conversational, and I've learned a lot. We've had some amazing conversations. So now, first I want to thank our sponsors, Catch On, Classcraft, FileWave, Global Teletherapy, GradeCam, and Sanford Programs, some of whom are new partners for us. So we're really happy to be working with them. You still have time. I think the conference ends officially at 7 p.m. Eastern time to submit your passport to prizes. So if you haven't had a chance, stop by the sponsor booth, say hi, schedule a meeting. They have live chat there as well. And then there's a button there so you can apply. You can submit a raffle for the passport to prizes. So that's cool. And I hope that you've all been using the networking feature. So in the registrant directory, this will still be available on demand too. You can connect with each other. So if you've met some people today and you miss their handles or you miss their contact info, they all live on the hub in that conference under the registration directory. And so, please keep the networking going. So right now, we are going to, it's my pleasure to welcome, we've got Missy Brooks, who's the Director of Instruction and Special Education from Mountain Brook Schools in Alabama. And we have Lindsay, and I didn't get the, Kusich? Did I do it right? Excellent. Lead mental health clinician with Global Teletherapy. And I'm really happy to have them both here today. We're going to talk about, the many issues facing and struggles facing of how you take care of your school communities, especially when you're in an online and blended environment. So without further ado, I think we'll turn it over to Lindsay to get us started. And Lindsay, you can just go ahead and share your screen for any slides you'd like to present. And of course, I'm sorry, keep the questions coming by chat, and like every other lounge discussion today, we really want to keep this conversational and address your questions and hear your ideas. So please take it away, Lindsay.
Well, hello, everybody. I am really excited to be here and to discuss one of my passions is about mental health. So, of course, this is really for a lounge purpose, and definitely the questions are going to come in. I did have a poll question that was submitted, but Christine, I don't know if it got sent to you guys yet, so I don't know if it's possible to quickly put it in there. But the question that I really wanted to ask everybody, have you reached out to your school psychologist yet? And I know that sounds like that might have been a really, well, of course, but then a lot of times it's like a forgotten person. And as a school psychologist, we have a lot of different roles, and sometimes administration doesn't realize what we're capable of doing or how we can help and assist. So one of the things, a little bit about me is that I have worked in 7 different districts and across 2 different states as a school psychologist. So I have a license in Michigan and California. So I am just a little south of LA. So yay, Sophia. So I work in Riverside County, and I've worked in 7 different districts across the areas that I've worked. And every time my role was very, very different. A lot of administration feels like school psychologist, that means you assess and we test for disabilities and you're our testing person. And absolutely, we are the only person in the district that you have on staff that can do that. But we also have a lot of other unique qualities. A lot of us have a mental health background as well. So we get dual degrees. And so we have our master's in counseling, or you get our EDS in other areas as well. So mental health is a big component. And of course we do the behavior, and we can really help. So you want to utilize those things as well. So not every school psychologist is trained the same. So reach out to your school psychologist so that way they can tell you what their area of strength is. And so what I'm going to do today is just kind of go over some tips, but rule number 1 throughout this whole entire thing, you must give yourself grace. This is so important. Changing what traditional school looks like is new to everyone. So no one has the right answers. And what works for one person doesn't always work for the next person. So give yourself grace and be humble through this, because this is trial and error and you're going to have to stumble forward. Remember, nothing is set in stone. So the choices and decisions that you make, they are not permanent. Usually it just costs one or two things to undo what you did, and that's usually both time or money. But that's okay. Those things we can work with, right? You want to provide reassurance to not only your colleagues, your teachers, parents, and the students that you are doing the best you can for everyone. This is really important because no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. They need to know that you're on this side and that you're not just making these decisions based off of what your gut instinct was. They want to know where these decisions came from. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because we really have to manage the stress and the emotional distress that is happening throughout this process. So a couple tips, so 10 tips. What I want you to do during this section is really just start firing questions as they come up. I don't know how to manage all of this all at once. So we're going to go through the presentation, then we'll chat at the end too, but just put them in the chat so that way we can see and answer everything. First thing to know, this is not new. This just might be new to you. So recognize that distance learning really has been going on for years. I currently, in my current position with Global Teletherapy, for the last 3 years, I have been servicing students in mental health ways that are on IEPs and providing virtual counseling sessions. I have rolled out virtual assessments starting last year. So this is not new, but it is new to you. Do not reinvent the wheel. So reach out to those that are seen as experts in the field. It sounds so simple, but know that you can keep digging and you can find people that are finding things that work. And then remember, schools have closed before because of disasters and they've had to learn to adjust. So it might not be on this massive scale, but we've gone through this. Schools get hit by tornadoes. They close down because of fires. One of my schools that I worked in 2 years ago, we had about a month delay in starting because of California fires. So we've gone through these tragedies before and we're able to come out the other end, but we have to do certain things to make sure we are successful. I really wanted to bring up Hurricane Katrina, especially with the academic piece of it, because I know that's also on the mind. But what Hurricane Katrina did, besides displace all the students and really disrupt the learning, when they did go back in session, one of the schools didn't focus on remediation and picking up where they left off. They plowed through with the new curriculum and how it was. So start fourth grade, we're working on fourth grade curriculum. But when they identified it a whole and they recognized that remediation needed to occur, that's when they implemented the remediation of the skill. But they did it in tandem instead of just starting back. And that way it pushed kids to learn faster and it was actually really successful. So I encourage you to go through, look up some different areas or disasters that may have happened, and maybe there's something that you can relate to and implement in your school. Tip number 2, look at what you have and then figure out what you need. So you need to decide what you have and what else you need to put into this place. Use the current systems that you already have. This is really important. You don't have to change everything. Do not have unnecessary change. It causes more stress for people, and we really have to try to slowly do this. So if you're using Class Dojo or PBIS or Parent Square or Remind, whatever you're currently using, if it's working, keep doing it. But then conduct a needs assessment and start asking everybody involved. And everybody involved, teachers, parents, students, administration, everybody can have a voice. And you really want to start collecting that information, because that's going to help you identify the changes of what is not working and what is working. So you can keep making these trial and error adjustments along the way. So that also means you need to give it a different lens. So different lenses are from different people. When developing your plan, use the lens of everyone else involved. Don't forget about the students. I was so amazed by what the California Department of Education did when they held a support session with students, and they asked the students, if you were in charge, what is it that you would do when you come back? And their answers were astounding. And we didn't even realize some of the problems and challenges that they faced as they've been going through this. So I encourage you to ask your students, get their voice as well. Also get the voice of those parents that are at home and they're trying to manage all of this. Let everybody guide you, so that way we're working together, and then we can figure out what's working and what's not working, And the students can also help you understand how they learn. We grew up when we didn't have this much technology. Did that change how students are learning now? So get their opinions as well. And then use your experts. Create teams for these challenges and solutions, finding opportunities, but use those that have experts in this field, because we always want to work within the strengths and work in the strengths of your community. Remember, there are staff and parents that have special skills or your superpowers. They have been hidden all around and you had no idea. I had no idea how many neighbors actually sewed. Not a clue. Now I know because everybody's making masks. So there are hidden talents that people have in your circle that you might not even know. So just ask. You may have to create some new jobs and add in some experts, and that's okay too. And then you want to collaborate with the people that the change is going to impact before the final decision is made. So this is critical to reduce that level of stress. Stress causes change causes stress. So we really want to make sure that these people that have to implement the change feel comfortable with it. So explain what it could be, allow them to give feedback, possibly tweak it. At least they know that their voice is heard, and then the change will occur. We have to define what this is all looking like. And don't try to force your traditional school roles back onto everything, because it's not going to work. This isn't one size fits all. This is something new to you. So choose what you want it to look like. It is now a buffet of options, and there is so much to choose from. You might feel like you're at a Vegas buffet because it has just everything, and there's glitz and glam, and everybody's trying to sell you something, and it's a little overwhelming. So you really do want to figure out what's going to work for you and look at your situation. Again, that goes all the way back to addressing what your needs are. If you don't have a need for it, don't add it on your plate right now. This is probably the biggest piece of advice that I can hand over, and this sometimes shocks people. But we have to accept that this is no longer the same. It's not going to go back to the way it was, even when this pandemic is over. We are at a point where it is forever changed. Now, of course, our school doors may open, but we have all just learned about technology and Google Classroom and all these other amazing things that we have learned, which is great. And so we're going to want to implement that and keep going forward. So even though our doors open back up, it's not going to be the same. So take this as a learning experience. But that's a really hard piece for a lot of people to understand, and they may not have accepted that yet. So they may have to go through a bit of a grieving process, that knowing that the old ways are over. So just be aware of that piece. Really important. We have to build a sense of community. We have to focus on school climate. That's been a buzzword. I know you've heard of it. You've been working on it. We still need it more than ever. Suicide rates are linked to isolation. So when people feel that they are not part of a community, then suicide increases. And so we know that our teens, huge impact of this. And we have ripped them away from everything they've known, which is friends. And so this is really hard. So it's important. It is on us as a community, as the school leaders, that we find a way to get everybody connected again. Now, one of my movements that I've been pushing is called Be Kind First. So we've all been familiar with the quote, if you could be anything, be kind. That's fantastic, right? Who wouldn't love that? Of course, but that's not enough. See, we are all kind. You have good intentions. I'm not a mean person. You're not a mean person. But it's that act of kindness and being first to show it that actually creates your sense of community. So what this looks like is if you're at the school teaching people to say hello first or say good morning. How many times your office staff is there and they're working on their computer and someone comes in and someone's just standing there and they're waiting and they're like, well, who says hello first? We just don't even know who acts first because it's not taught on our social norms. And especially if it's a stranger. Or think about young kids as they're walking down the hallway and the adult and nobody says anything. And it's like, well, I don't know that kid. Should I say something to that kid? So it really is getting over that fear of that uncomfort and then realizing it's okay to be kind first. It's so important. So that word, not just be kind first is the movement that you want to push. And that's really going to help build a sense of community. And it's going to help build these relationships and making the connections, because we still need to make connections. We have to interact with each other. So giving that permission to do it is where you can also help. This is a fun one. We have to monitor remotely. Okay. This means setting up expectations, including behavior expectations, and feel free to learn from my mistakes, as I have learned in this world where I have a student come to a session and it's part of their IEP and they attend with no shirt because they are at home, or you have people in their pajamas. Like, no, there is still a dress code, but they may not think that those things are appropriate. And so you want to establish these roles and these expectations first. So students, parents, and teachers, the parents don't know what they're supposed to do. They really are just floundering. Should I separate the kids? Should all the kids be at the kitchen table? Do I need to be in the room? Do I need to check on them? The teachers aren't sure as to what they need to do either. So we really have to, as part of your role, define what those roles look like in this new setting, who's responsible for what, and list out those expectations. We're also going to need to do a check-in system for these emotional struggles and frustration. You're not going to be able to see if someone is frustrated. And we know that students do not self-advocate for themselves. That is a skill that I teach constantly over and over and over. So, you know, where parents end up expressing their emotional struggles, and that's going to be on social media. And usually they put the school out on blast. So definitely, if we put a system in place that's going to handle those emotional struggles, we want to put that in there. And you're going to want to progress monitor different things: data collection, behavior, participation, attendance, communication, all of that's different. Forget the dibbles. I mean, you still need that. But right now we're going to focus on that emotional piece because we need to know what's working and what's not working. Because if you're not emotionally stable, then you're not learning, and then we're just spinning our wheels. So we do have to put that extra piece in there. We have to provide trauma-informed training to all. Every student should now be treated as if they've experienced a trauma, because we have. We've all lost something. And so that is going to require training of staff and now parents. Everybody needs to know what to look for. We need to know what the warning signs are for suicide risks, and how do we conduct these risk assessments now that we're in a virtual setting? What do we do? Who do we go to? So you want to make sure that you provide resources and plan for how to help the students, how to help the parents, how to help the staff and the teachers. Who is your point of contact? Great person to start with? School psychologists. So get them involved. You got to make it safe. And I'm not just talking about putting up plastic sheets or our stickers that say 6 feet apart. I'm talking about our mental safety. We need to feel protected. The teachers, the staff, the students, what do they need to feel safe? Everybody needs something different. We don't know those answers until we ask them. We also need to know what resources they need to do the job effectively. It could be training. It could be they just need more time. They may need longer breaks. There's a lot of different things, but what do they need to feel protected and then feel that they are valued and they are listened? You also want to establish a point of contact that they can reach out to for help, not just tech issues, but there needs to be someone that they can go to, like a linkage person, a liaison. Great person for this would be your school social worker to help guide you through this process. School social workers are really designed to help with a linkage program. This would be something that's great for them because we really need to help them feel protected. This falls under Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need that foundation there. So I'm sure you've heard it. It must have come up, Maslow before Bloom, right? So again, make sure they're feeling safe. My favorite piece is you got to think outside the box. So there are several different ideas of what distance learning will look like, and you can have a blended look because one size does not fit all. Your school hours can be in the evening. Huh, oh my gosh, who would have thought? Think about the time that we go to college. Why was college so amazing for us? Why did we learn so much in such a little amount of time? I'm going to attribute it mainly to the naps that I was able to take because my day was broken up. I may or may not still have that in my schedule today. But those are things that we can look at and be like, why does that work so well for us? Also, parents might have more availability to help and monitor. And then looping the students with their teachers, that is a huge thing. And that'll be my last point because I know, Christine, you're trying to come back for me. But looping students, you might not have heard this term before, but this helps create safety with the student because the student is able to stay with that same teacher for 2 to 3 years. So you keep the class together and the teacher just learns the new curriculum. Not all teachers will want to do this, but I have seen it in action when I had to live through some of the fires, and the amount of educational academic growth that those students made that stayed with their teacher for 2 years was so much higher than the other students that switched. So consider that as well. So, all right, I will stop my share, and that way, Christine, you can jump in and we can turn it over to Missy. I'm sorry I took up all your time. You are still muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Lindsay. There are a lot of things that you said that I was going to talk about as well. And, you know, I'm Missy Brooks, Director of Special Ed and K-12 Curriculum and Instruction for a district just outside of Birmingham, Alabama. And this has been a real challenge for us. And obviously, Alabama is kind of a more rural state. And so some of the tips and things that I want to talk about in dealing with special ed would deal with what happens if you don't have internet with someone. So I just have a few things to kind of talk about. And the one thing that you mentioned was give yourself grace. And that is, that has been our mantra for students, for teachers, for everybody, because this is new to us. And I would say we spent probably the first 2 weeks of online learning teaching parents how to use different tools because they didn't know. One of the things that was really successful for us is making that personal contact with particularly our special ed students. We did it with all of our students, but our special ed students, you know, we kind of put in some things of you have to get in touch with them at least once a week. It could be in a small group, it could be one-on-one, it could be whatever it is. We were actually very successful in putting our aides on with them, or our BCBA or RBTs, things like that, to help with that behavior, because we had a lot of students that didn't understand, you know, if because their schedule was different and now school was at home and home is supposed to be home. And so that was a really difficult thing to navigate, but we were able to pull that off by really working with the parents, having scheduled meetings to work with the student and with the parent so that we can implement the behavior plan at home. And so that was something, it just took a lot of collaboration. That's another thing that I've heard across at least this state is the lack of collaboration with the gen ed teacher and special ed teachers. So for our people that didn't have internet, it would be they got a packet of things to do, but it wasn't accommodated. And so that's one of the things that I want to say, hey, be careful. As you are trying to serve your kids, make sure that there is a collaboration between that gen ed teacher and the regular ed teacher so that you're truly giving faith to that child. I would love to hear what some other people have done about you know, just how do you provide related services? We've done it via Google Meet. We've done it via Google Meet, and it has been pretty successful. PT obviously looks a little different. OT looks a little different, but we've been able to do it. So Christine put a question in, is like, how are you addressing mental health? And one of the things that we're doing is we are really focusing on some professional development for our teachers. Lindsay talked about trauma-based instruction. We want to embed the trauma-based instruction along with social emotional learning, embedding that into the curriculum so that we're not completely losing time with the curriculum. We've got to move forward with that and fill in any gaps that we have. But we are obviously using the Castle model for social emotional learning, and are planning to do a lot of professional development virtually and maybe in person. We're kind of in that almost open state, so we're looking at how do we get back into it. That's something else that I wrote down as something to mention. I would love to hear how you guys are going to transition students back into the building when they come, because that's a big concern for me. If you have anything, I'll tell you what we do, but I would love to hear from you if you put it in the chat, or just, you know, raise your hand or say that you want to say something. I think that would be great. What we're doing is we have some students that are transitioning from one school to another, and we are doing video transitions for them. So we will video kind of where this kid is going to be in his schedule, and kind of doing some video things. Obviously we're in the process of doing that. I don't even know if we're going to open in August, but even if we don't, it would be something that when we do open, these kids are going to need transition. So we're thinking about doing it video. We're showing pictures, doing social stories, you know, introducing them to their new teachers a lot earlier and having meets even before our schools get back in. So they did it, so I'm reading here that they did it by video chat and phone calls. That's another thing, is even if you don't have internet, you have a phone. And so it's good to be able to call the students at least and have them talk to you. That is something that is vitally important, for particularly for special ed students and those with behavior problems. So I would love to hear any other reintegration strategies that you've been thinking about, and anything about social emotional learning and how are you providing mental health, because I think that's going to be the key thing. I'm very concerned about anxiety. Some of the things that I've read actually talks about we need to be prepared for PTSD, where some kids are going to be so, parents, some teachers maybe. We have a couple of teachers that have, you know, a particular issue, a health issue, and they're afraid to come back to the building. So what do we do there? How do we work with that and still provide the education to our kiddos? That's something that we're really looking at. The whole idea of another thing about goal writing and regression during this time, I would love to hear how you guys are thinking. How long are you going to give yourselves to reassess, to figure out? There was a recommendation in Alabama for it to be within 30 days. And I'm like, I don't know how we can assess every single kid within 30 days. So I would love to know, like, what are you thinking about that when we do come back and we assess, even if it's virtually? How are you going to assess, and how are you going to figure out where the kids are, and how do we even rewrite the goals? Because you're probably like us, there were some IEPs that we didn't get to rewrite, and we missed their annual deadline because we couldn't write the plop, you know, we couldn't write their present level of performance. We couldn't do that because we don't know where they were and their, you know, different things. So I'd love to hear some things, you know, if you have thought about that and what you're going to do. I know a lot of people, I heard like earlier, a lot of people were using iReady. And if that's what you're going to do, then I would be interested to see how you're going to use iReady to then write the goals for that. Another thing that we're—
oh, sorry, Missy. In regards to the reintegration, not just benchmark data on your academics and your reading and writing. There are tools and assessment tools out there to do large screening on mental health. And I highly encourage, again, reach out to your school sites. They're going to be able to have access to the tools that would really work. But you can do mental health screeners on everybody, and then develop a tier that those that are going to need any additional support and support groups. I do run groups through students. We utilize Zoom. We have no more that managing 8 students is a lot when it comes to mental health needs. 10 is the max, but we're able to set up those sessions to really help those students and express what their areas of need are. And those can be run by your school counselors. They can be run by your school psychologists, school social workers. They're qualified to do those, and they can be listed as a tier 2 intervention. So that way you're not utilizing special education funds. Those that are in special education, they can also have that written into their IEP as well. And so you can gather that information. But definitely the progress monitoring piece, utilizing what's already out there, is going to help gauge what those students are ready to learn and be able to complete and see the progress and make sure things are working. We always want to check to see if we are making progress. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels and you don't know. So that data collection piece is really important.
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
One thing I was going to jump in when we were talking yesterday, Lindsay, I really liked, and I think this came out of the California Board of Education, the focus on asking the students what they want. And I will say, I haven't really heard that come up all that much today. A lot of, here's what we're planning, here's how we're training our, here's how we're training our teachers, et cetera. And I'm just curious for our speakers and for some other folks in the hangout here, how are you actually reaching out to the students and really hearing from them, because they might have some different answers for what they need.
Well, while we're waiting on people to post, I can talk about what we've done in our district. And we did send out a lot of open-ended questions, a lot of different kinds of, we work with a company, Qualtrics. I don't know if anybody else does that, and that's how we do our surveys. But we've created surveys for parents, students, and teachers just to really see like what worked best, what didn't work, and what do we need to consider as we reopen. Or not, and if we go to this online thing, if that's the way we start, then what do we need to do better? And it was really interesting, some of the things, and it was technological things that they came up with. So one of the things that our students said was, see, we have two different platforms. So our younger kids use Google Classroom, and then our older kids use Canvas. Because a lot of colleges use Canvas or whatever. But what we found was parents are like, can we all just use the same thing? Because I've got a young kid, I've got an older kid, and I don't really want to learn how to do all of it. And then we have some teachers that have decided, I'm just going to put links to everything in Canvas, but I'm not really going to use the calendar feature. And so they're having to look everywhere to figure out what is it that I have due. So that's something that we've decided. We've always given our teachers a lot of autonomy to kind of use what tool they think is best. But I think we're seeing from this that we actually are going to need to have a platform K-12 that we use that is consistent, and have it look exactly the same way so that students know where they're going and what they're doing, and they know where to look. So that's something that has come out from students. The other thing that's come out from students, and this is really interesting because this came out from some special ed students too, they liked being able to schedule their own day. They liked the flexibility of being able to do math when they wanted to do math. They liked the flexibility of being able to, you know what, I want to sleep till 10, and then I want to, you know, at 7 or 8 at night is when I really want to do my work, so I can, you know, go sit at the pool or whatever. Then, so that's been something that I think is interesting. Our gifted population has really enjoyed that part. So I am interested in what's going to happen when these kids come back and they're used to structuring their own day or having all the play breaks and all the things that their parents might have done with them at our suggestion. But yet when we bring them back to school, you have, you know, you've got this recess at this time only. And so what are we going to do to allow students to have a voice in that flexibility of how their day is structured, and is that even possible?
Yeah, I see Thea Patrick. I don't know if you'd be willing to, it looks like I clicked on the link here.
Yeah.
Articles. So not to put you on the spot, but I'm curious, the articles, that link you shared looks really interesting. I don't know if you would be open to sharing what you're working on. Oh, your mic isn't working. Okay, no problem.
Well, I know, hey, I was like, Thea, she used to work in our district.
Oh, okay, small world.
Yeah, she was a technology coordinator in our district. So good to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for putting that link in there. So, okay, she's talking about trauma-informed instruction. Yeah. I think it's interesting. And Lindsay, I'm going to put those tips up in our conference hub because those, you know, it's a lot to process just at once. But I think this idea of trauma, of PTSD, for not just the students, but for, you know, the whole school.
Everybody. I think we're really going to have an issue with anxiety coming as we begin to open up and come back. You can already see it, you know, in Alabama, we have restaurants are open and some things like that, obviously at a smaller capacity, but it's weird. And a lot of people that I've talked about, they're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to a restaurant. So there will be a lot of that.
One of the things that it hasn't been talked about, but get prepared about those emotional support animals, right? Right now, a lot of kids are at home. I see it in my sessions with the students. They need to have their dog or their cat. We pull in animals all the time during our sessions. Teachers will report that, yeah, their cat was there. And we make a joke of it, right? The cat is always sitting on the keyboard, just so you know. But now we're going to, that's a comfort tool for them. Mm-hmm. And now we're taking them from their home, which is comfort. We're taking them from their animal, which is comfort. And we're putting them in a scary position. There's nothing there. So you may want to look into getting animals on your campus that you can utilize as emotional support animals. Pause is a great place to start. I don't have the website. I will Google that and try to find it, but that is a way for you to get a licensed social emotional support animals on your campus to utilize for those reasons. Lots of schools have done that before, but I haven't seen it talked about yet, but it might come down the pipeline because you're going to get these people from IEPs and 504s that are like, let's write it in there that she can bring her dog to school. Like, if you haven't gotten one of those requests yet, it's coming. So,
and there's not a lot of guidance with IDEA on that. So they are limited to dogs and miniature horses.
Right.
But there's not really a lot of guidance as far as do they actually have to prove that they've been through all the training to be a service animal, rather than just a comfort animal. So that's something to check into and make sure that your district has either a policy or a procedure to walk through to let the animals in, if that is the case.
And there's a difference between a service animal and an emotional support animal.
Exactly.
So emotional support animal is not written into any of those legal policies. It is just service animals, which has to do a service that the human would not be able to do without that animal. So comfort animals are not part of this, but it's going to come. And as we know that in very litigious areas, this will come faster and then it'll set precedent. So if we can get ahead of it and actually just start incorporating it into the school, look into that as part of the program as well.
Thank you. And so before we run out of time, we have about 5-ish, 10-ish minutes left. I want to make sure we have time for questions. So, and questions or sharing your own ideas. And I think to Missy's question, what are you planning for next year? Do you have a plan in place? We'd love to hear from some other folks on the call. We can wait whatever the required amount of time is to wait for somebody to jump in. So Lisa Nielsen is Ruth, would you like to share something? Yeah, hi.
Well, we're at my school, we're still not there. And I'm a world language teacher for the most part, which is really tough because I have a full class of 34 students and I don't have any co-teachers. So a lot of the differentiating that I do for for kids that have special needs, like it's a world of work for me. And one of the biggest things that I guess I'm curious about is, I've been outreaching and talking to parents and families and trying to comfort them, but it's been such a huge, overwhelming job. Are there any specialized software programs that you guys recommend that maybe teachers can use to help, kind of reach out to families and check in with them in an easier way? Because like for most of the teachers that teach elective courses, we have 35 kids. No co-teacher. So we have like 170 or 180 for the whole day that,
I know.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And I also know, Lindsay, if you wanted to give a plug for your service, the company you work for, you do have a ton of resources, related to mental health and things like that as well. But I wanted to just mention that, and I'll put the link in here too. But yeah, so either one or anybody else on the call, I'm going to hop in.
There's additional resources for sure. And when you're looking at the services as to what can offer, teletherapy you can outsource. You can use vendors to fill the need instead of hiring people, because when you hire someone or you take someone in that current role and then have them just take on this responsibility, they're now learning a new role and a new job description, and they don't know how, and it may not be effective. So again, go back to the experts. There's people that have already been doing this. Global Teletherapy has been around for 6 years. We service special education students per their IEP in all the different areas. So mental health related, speech and language pathologists can see the students in groups and individual, OTs, and even PT. So a lot of times we need to work on the physical education and we have these struggles. What are we going to do? So utilize the people that are already out there doing it instead of trying to add one more thing to your plate to where am I going to do this? And then stressing out someone who they didn't really sign up for that, because then you're not going to really get what you want. So, and as far as any sort of programs for those extracurricular activities, I'm not 100% sure what programs there are out there, as I'm not in the education. So I don't know if Missy, you have tackled those extracurricular activities yet.
Well, the extracurricular activities, no, we haven't tackled that yet. But as far as world language, I will say in the midst of all of this and working from home and all of that, you know, and you know this, I'm sure, but any of the games, there are all kinds of apps that you can send out, you know, Duolingo, Babbel, all of those things make it kind of fun to learn a language. In my time, I've been learning Spanish through Duolingo, which has been kind of fun for me, you know, just as an extra little thing to do. But, you know, I would love to hear if anybody else has got other things that you could use. The languages, it's hard because you got to talk to them. You know, you got to do all 4 parts of that, of the speaking, reading, writing, and listening. And it's, you know, it's not just a worksheet that you can put up. So there has to be that communication. You know, we found that, honestly, Google Meet has been our go-to to talk to them with the G Suite of you know, education. Google Apps for Education, I think is what it used to be called, but that's been our go-to, and that's kind of worked pretty well for us. But yeah, I don't know, I would, maybe small groups working on certain skills and grouping the kids together. It's all really hard. I would hate to be teaching a language right now. I like learning one.
Yeah, Leah's adding some more resources here. And I don't know, Lisa Nielsen, if you, not to put you on the spot, but I know in New York City, DOE, you certainly have lots and lots of languages, and, you know, and if you have any thoughts here of, oh, sorry, you're connecting your audio. But I know Lisa's very in tune with some cool tools to use.
Well, I would just say, and I was gone for a little bit and coming back, but I can jump in here for a moment. In my role as Senior Director of Digital Inclusion, one of the things we do, and we teach a class on writing for translation. So there's ways that you can write so that it's more easily automatically translatable. And we teach a class on writing in plain language. So as far as just connecting with people who speak multiple languages, we have more than 50% of our homes in New York City speak a language other than English at home. So we're very in tune to that. And I do think just for like the most staff, where you're not going to get every single document translated into 10 languages, if you do learn to write in plain language and write for translation, that would be definitely helpful. I could pop a link in the chat where I have some tips on how to do that.
Thank you. And once again, 45 minutes has disappeared all day. But so I wanted Lindsay, Missy, you want to each maybe give maybe some closing remarks, just to kind of summarize, and again, so many resources that I will put up into the conference hub, but maybe Lindsay, you want to go first with the.
All right. So, I mean, the emotional piece is going to be huge, and that really is where the focus comes in, because if the mind is not stable enough to learn, then everything else is going to be a waste of time. So we really need to take that first amount of time to really establish a safe and protected environment where everybody feels comfortable learning and people feel comfortable teaching, and everybody knows what their roles are, so they can have those expectations, and that way they are ready to learn. We need to make sure that their window is open. So if you are trauma informed, you'll learn about a window of tolerance, and we really need to identify what that window of tolerance is and make sure all students are performing in that area as to what they are. So get their opinions to help formulate what your school needs to look like and do to support them.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Missy, you want any?
Yeah, the one thing that I would say that I haven't mentioned is utilize your community partners. there are a lot of people that are very talented around, and I think Lindsay did talk about that piece, but there are a lot of people that can help with this mental health piece and might even do it for free. There are all kinds of agencies out here that we are going to partner with so that we can, when we do open up, we have a place for them to go that is not, so that our counselors aren't completely overwhelmed. You know, we don't have social workers in our school. So that's something that we're looking to partner with different agencies to perhaps get some of that counseling piece and that work with students. So as they are feeling this anxiety and they can't do the work, how do we help them through that? And the same goes for teachers too. So I would say use your community partners to try and figure out how you can partner with them to do what's best for the kiddos as far as mental health.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Missy. Really appreciate your time on this very complex question, which seems to be how I'm concluding every session today. But this one in particular feels complex. So thank you both for your time. And we have one session left, which is planning for next year. A nice, nice big topic. So we'll pause for a stretch break, and then please come back and join us for our final session of the day. If you haven't yet gone to the conference hub and you want to get your passport to prize submitted, just go to the hub, visit the sponsors. You'll find the button there, and of course there will be fabulous prizes. So thank you again to our speakers, and thanks for participating.